I've applied a coat of the cadmium orange hue along in the eye sections. Now I've mixed a bit of black into bittersweet, and I am coming along the outer edges of the eye, nose and mouth, to basically create a shadow along this section. Just let it blend over into that. We're going to darken that with a mixture that I make that's a dark brown, which is a 1-to-1 black. You don't see it as much, and it always depends on the color of your shirt, but it's going to show up more as it dries. So I just kind of nice and softly, it's almost like walking it out. I'm not scrubbing hard by any means. You don't want to overblend. You'll lose all your color. So I just want to walk that out a little bit. And then I just wipe my brush. Now I could add my highlight at this time or just go for the strengthening. I'm going to go for strengthening. So this is my dark brown. Very much resembles our black brown that we make and use all the time as well. But this is 1-to-1 brown and black in our So Soft colors. So I just want to, you see I'm not pressing hard. You should not hear the brush scrubbing on your fabric. And I just want to, I'm not wanting it to come out as far and get rid of all the first brown tone that we put in here. Bittersweet with a bit of black in it. I still want to keep that. So we just apply this color, bring it out. And we'll use this in our pumpkin as well. You can push colors back if you feel you've got too much strong. See, I can get more orange to show up there. Now I'm just going to wipe my brush off, and I want to go into the tangerine as my highlight. Now these colors always, when we're working like this, kind of fade down. So this may look extremely bright as a highlight, and I just softly pat it. I don't want to go over and push away all of the original orange. I just want this to be my highlight. And it is going to die down as it dries. And when it's completely dry, a lot of times I'll go back in and either scratch in a bit more, or I can even dry brush a bit on there. It'll work well for that. So nice and bright. Don't press hard. If you press hard, it overblends and it works it in too much. So just nice and soft, work it in. And then we can move on to another part. I've applied my coat of my cadmium orange hue, and now I'm taking some of the bittersweet, and I'm just using the side of my lunar blender and just kind of applying it and scratching it in. I want to create ridges in my pumpkin. And again, they will die down. So you think you're applying something dark. And it doesn't look like a lot of contrast either. You can come in with some of the dark brown mix as well. But we're going to add lines throughout as well with our, you can use a liner, or I like to use the fabric markers. I have a Marvy marker, I have a Pebeo marker. I do like using them. You need to make sure that your fabric is good and dry. So I'm just applying these kind of randomly here and there. I don't want to bring all my lines from the top to the bottom. Like I can take a line and just come in from part way. That way it gives a little bit more dimension and it doesn't make them look like a jailbird pumpkin. So we just bring these stripes up a little darker, and I softly blend them so that they're not going to be exactly what I just said, like a stripe, but we're coming in with highlights as well. So I will clean my brush off. It doesn't require being washed. I can just wipe it in my towel. You see how it's dyed down in my eyes already. It doesn't look anywhere near as bright. We come back after and we'll brighten this up if you like. It's optional. So you see the tangerine really helps to add some nice dimension to our pumpkin. And I like a lot of that. And I know that it's going to die down as well. So we'll bring tangerine, again the same way, some from the top down, some part way, just all of a sudden in the middle of nowhere they start. And again, remember, we'll come back and we will brighten up, add more highlight as wanted. But it blends in nicely now, but it's going to die down to the point where you're going to say, I don't even see any of that. And I like to have enough of it coming around the eyes. They tend to make my eyes pop out for me more. We are going to have the eyes outlined, and there are some really beautiful highlights that are going in our eyes. So I'm just applying these highlights and softly scratch them in. Give them those stripy ridge looks that we see on the pumpkin. We want those on our stem as well. So I just streak back and forth, pull in these highlights, as much tangerine as you like. I think that looks pretty good. It's the black lines outlining that's going to do a lot more for him after. All right, so basically that's good. I'll kind of dry that up so that I can go for our stem. I'm going to add highlights to the eye, and I'm going to use my liner, and I'm going to put starbursts in. Now those are done in tangerine over in the brown section. And these, at starburst, it's an X over top of an X. And then over on the orange part, I add another one. This one is with the cadmium yellow. So cadmium yellow highlights there. I'm going to take the tangerine and stripe a highlight inside the nose and inside the mouth. Now I'm also going to add tangerine highlight around the eye. Pop that up. I can come through if I want with my liner and pull in a few just lines of highlight if you like, or we can dry scratch some in after. That one's a bit much, so I'll just pull in a couple. I don't want to get too crazy. But just a bit of highlight, extra highlight I call it, adds. All right. So that's our extra highlights on our eyes. I almost forgot the dots. I'm going to add, using a stylus, I'm going to add some tangerine dot highlights. Just up from the starburst. Just go up a couple. That looks better. I've adapted this stem a little bit. I put a wet coat on it. The shape of this jacket just kind of lent its way to putting the bat on top rather than on the pumpkin. I put them on the stem. So anyway, I added a little black to my olive, which gives me like a black green. I'm applying that using my 1/4 inch where a stem crosses over another stem. And then I'll also apply a little bit right here in the curve. And I'll come down here and I'll apply some as a chisel to give our stem a bit of ridgy look. You know how they're very ridgy. So we want to get that look in there. So I just kind of streak a little bit through here and there. And I'm going to wipe my brush, and then I'm going for the green apple. And I'm going to use it on my chisel. It's much like the tangerine. It's going to look shocking bold when it goes on, but it's going to die down. And I just use the chisel. Sometimes I'll turn the brush to get a little wider highlight flight. But don't overwork. Don't press it in too much. You might think, oh, I need to. It's looking too bold. It is not going to stay that way. You'll actually go back after and you'll highlight a bit more. So I want to add light where the stem is crossing over the other stem. So you know how we darkened below? We'll add a bit of light there. These will die down so much. And bring a little highlight here and a little right there. Add a bit more on this stalk of the pumpkin too. I think that looks pretty cute. All right, next we go to the bat's eyes. I'm going to paint the little colored section on our bat's eyes using my 1/8 lunar blender, and I'm going to go around and apply dioxazine purple. Then I'm going to come around, do the second eye, do the second eye. Kind of went off my line there, but that's not a problem because it's black, the bat is, it'll cover it right up. So we are going to add our highlight up on the top right of his eye. So I pick up a little bit of lavender, and I don't want to press too hard. I don't want it to fade completely in. And you know how our bright colors are going to fade in because everything's wet. So it's going to die down. I do bring my purple into the purple just at the edge. I just want to blend where they stop and start so we don't end up having those bold, sharp lines. I'm also going to take my liner and just pull in a little fine line down around the bottom edge of his eye. Now, if you have those liners that are the nice fat handled, any kind like that. Those work perfect to add little kind of cheater pupils. So I'm just, but I can paint them as well, but it's just quick, and that works well. And then I'll add my white highlight with my stylus later as it dries, because the black is just way too wet for that. So we're going to work, I'm going to go right now into the body, pardon me, into the ears of our little bat. So I'm going to start, both ears are going to be done the same. I'm going to start coming off the edge, nice and what I call wispy. Do you see my 1/8 lunar blender? Just turn it, bring it nice and wispy. Then I go about 1/4 of the way in. Then I'm going to come in here with my bittersweet, and this would be right along where the top of the ridge of the ear is. And I'll just streak that over into the black. I want the two to blend together, bittersweet into the black. It ends up giving it just a soft, you see that in there a bit, but not too much. And that, forgot to grab my white out. I'm going to make a gray with white. Guess who needs more white? I'm going to make a gray with a little bit of white and black. I kind of want, you know, a gray that resembles, I'm going to say neutral gray or slate, in between neutral and slate. And I'm just going to use the chisel of my brush. Do you see that little bit of a highlight? And I'm going to use my liner after and bring some nice little wispies off. And we'll come along the top and add the top rim of his ear. And I can just wisp a little off of the top as well. Apply a little gray highlight along the top on this ear. And when I add little highlights after, they'll be with my liner. So both ears are going to be done the same. And then I'm going to bring in his little head, just a little wispy like that. We want it to kind of come up a little bit, kind of, he gets a little bit of a cone head look there. He's a spunky little bat. And his little face comes out wispy again on the edges. This is where I went out of my line, so I'll just reshape my eye there. Once our bat has dried enough, we will be dry brushing some dark rose cheeks on her. Nice and wispy off the edge. And it'll be the same on both sides. I'll come along underneath the eyes. And make sure you're not cheap with your paint, because you'll see through the fabric paint. If you'll see the little holes. It's on a sweatshirt. You really want it to get worked into there. So I'm going to come down to her little chin and it comes into the bat body and then over into the wings. Now, I want to pick up a little of the gray highlight and just kind of come up the middle of, just real soft. I don't want to have it really, really bold. Add a few little fine highlights up top. Couple, I'll reinforce that one on top of the ear again. And I'll bring a few little gray highlights off into the wispy. There. And he's gonna, he, we're gonna put some eyebrows. And I can just blend that little bit of a chin there as well. And when we talk about the black little fine lines with my liner, it's these little wispy ones I'll bring off after so that they don't all look the same. Put a couple up top. That little wiry looking face. And I'll complete the other ear on the other side like that. Now his wings, body comes into the wings. They come up into those picks. And again, remember, I talked about filling in your lines nicely. You don't want to leave. I'm just grabbing something here. I don't want to leave the, I don't want to leave the body and the arms attached, so we will separate those with a highlight after. It's not anything really dramatic. So I fill in my wings. I'm giving him a nice little pick coming over the zipper here for the end of his wing. All right, that looks pretty cute. He comes down both sides, the bottom of his body. Looks like a little skirt almost. And then the bony little legs. So the bony little legs, he has knees. I call them bony knees. That's why I keep saying his bony legs. I want these knees to show up. I think they're really cute. So we have that. A couple of the ladies wanted to paint the toenails on her and have her as a diva bat. I think that's really cute. So we'll just, if you're going to give her that diva bat, I think she would go really cute with the dark rose that we're using to dry brush her cheeks after. Now, her body, I'll just come right here so that I'm getting that side to the body so I can explain to you. Okay, so we're going to take our gray and I'm going to come down the sides of her body to separate her arms or her wings from her body. Then we're going to use the gray on the chisel of my quarter. Just slide along the top. I come down a little bit so it looks like there's a ridge to there. and I'm creating the highlight. I'll use whatever's on my brush and blend in down to the spines, these little spines on their wings. Let me strengthen those little highlights there a bit more. That's better. We're going to take our liner. We're going to bring the bat tips down and the point up, but off the bottom we'll bring some little funky hair with our liner off the tips of our wings. They look cute. That looks pretty cool. And then we're going to add, I guess I need a big stylus for that. I want to add my white pupils. And then just a tiny little dot beside it. And if you feel like you have them too big, once they die down a bit, then you can just go around them and make them a little tinier. I'm going to add a little bow on her neck with the Indian turquoise and a little highlight. That's our gray. There should be a little highlight line along the bottom of there. A little highlight on her bony knees. Now her legs are a little, they're not on the pumpkin like they were on the other one. I'll just highlight that up a bit. And so they don't show up quite as much, so I just added that little bit on the bottom. All right. And we'll put her little mouth back on her bottom of her chin or mouth, whichever it is. And looking cute. She is looking cute. For my cat's eyes, I've base coated the eye. We had an antique gold, so the antique gold is a base and it may show through for us, and sometimes it doesn't. But there is a reason for it under there. I'm now going to take on the corner of my dirty brush from base coating. I am taking, and I'm not pressing hard. This is, again, I like to remind you, I'm not pressing hard. So we have our bright yellow, and I've got bittersweet on the corner of my brush. And I blend with the bittersweet up and the yellow down. So now I'm going to take some cadmium yellow and I'm going to just come along the bottom just with my, you can use anything you'd like. I'm using a 0 round to come in here and just there. I don't want to come up too high. I want it to be, and I'll come back later and I will pop that up a bit again with a liner in the middle. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to base coat my pupils. That you can do them with the handle of a brush, whatever works good for you. They're going to be black. We're going to dry them, and then we can come back and put our highlight on. I've started base coating my cat. The ears are the very same way we did the ears on the bat. So I put the, pardon me, the bittersweet, and I'm going to scratch it. Whoops, my shirt's not tight as I want it to be, so I'll scratch back and forth from the bittersweet into the black. And then I'm going to come up the back of her ear And we'll wisp a little bit over onto our highlight, or pardon me, onto our bittersweet inside the ear. And now I'm just nice and soft scratching some of my gray. And I'll put a few gray highlights, work them into that black by my ear. I still want to have pure black around the edge there, so I'll just come back with a bit more. There. And I'm going to be pulling some little fine black lines and gray lines as highlight fur coming on here, but we will use the liner to do those. So we've got them base coated. I'm going to do the other ear the same way. So I want to bring some light up the middle of his nose. And then I'm going to bring a little over to give her eyebrows. And it's just a highlight. It's just nice and soft. We do want it to work in. I want to see it. And this just fades up into the black. I might come back with more black if I get it more than I want. And he's gonna have comes down a little bit for his nose. And I'm gonna pick up more gray on my lunar. And I'm just gonna come across. Now you're gonna see that your nose is kind of lined up with the bottom of her eyes. So I put her nose in there. I'll pop this up a little bit more. So it's almost like a T, same thing for our bat, tiny. And then she needs to have her cheeks. So they come from that kind of dent under her nose. That's my highlight, and I'll scuff it down. Whoops. I don't want it that high up there. It's a slip. This is a tough one because this shirt is a little different shape than the other ones that I've been doing it on. I'm just going to get that black out of there, or gray highlight out of there by rubbing a bit, and take my little tiny lunar blender and put some more black back in there, and that'll deal with that. Now, we want to give her a little bit of a mouth. I want the mouth curve that way. That's really, really important. Her lip. It's just her little pouty lip. We want to give her that top to the lip. So that looks really cute. I'm going to come and highlight my paws. And then the second paw. Not paw, toe. And now another toe. Highlight the top of the paw. I'll do the same on both. And then we're going to pull in some claws. Might have transferred them on. You don't have to. I'll put these little claws on. And then I take my liner and I'm going to put a little highlight on my claw. And I'm going to bring a little highlight line to highlight my toe. So that really makes a big difference on her. I'm going to put that little tiny highlight line along the outer part of her eye, just to give a highlight. There we go. There. This is how we'll be adding those little lines with the liner. nice and fine. I'll add black ones as well. But what's really cute is the little, I'm going to pick up a little more, a little white on here. We're going to give her these little lash whiskers that come out from there. I've added a bit of white to my brush into the gray for those little lash whiskers. So we just pull those in. I think I could have them still a little brighter even. There. And I'll pull a few more highlight hair from there. That looks super cute. And I'm going to add more highlight lines along the side of her face. And then we've got whiskers. And my whiskers never start from the same place. And they're really sweet. I've got to put her pupils on still, but she's got a little fine gray comma highlight along the bottom of the pupil. And I'm just going to pop that one that goes along the outer part of the eye up a bit more. It's not showing enough for me. Same thing here. I have that one a little close. So I'm going to come in between and put my black back. There we go. And then we have our highlights. So she has, and then just a tiny one beside it. Sweet. She's sweet. And I'll just finish that other ear and that paw the same way. I've put a coat of green apple, well, 2 coats of green apple on my little spider's eyes. Took a couple coats because this one's over top of the pumpkin. And I'm picking up some of my black-green mix on the corner of my dirty brush. And I'm going to come down and basically blend to shade between the 2 eyes. We want it to kind of come out nicely and give us a nice color so that our eyes kind of vary a little bit. Just kind of bring it along the outer edge a bit there. And once it's dry, we're going to put on our pupils and highlights. I've mixed a little black into my Mediterranean blue. I'm just finishing up his chin here. And I come halfway up his head. Now I'm going to take ocean blue and base coat the top of his head. Come down We want the blues to blend into each other. Get my brush of wipe, and then I just streak the dark blue into the light blue, back and forth. Don't want to take out his eye. I'll just have a little of that dark blue to come along the top. He's going to have some little wispy hairs that come up from the bottom. And then I'm going to, with the ocean blue, streak down the middle of my legs as highlights. I had painted inside his mouth those little hollows at the end, and his lip, inside his lip, I guess. And I'll just lighten that with a bit of highlight and put ocean blue in the middle here and let that blend out to the dark. I think I could take a little of that dark and just come from around the outer edges and blend it in. Highlight down these legs. Just chisel down the highlight. You want it to blend into the wet paint. And I'm going to take a little bit of white and mix it into the ocean blue. Not a lot. I just want to make a little bit of a lighter highlight. So it's just that little bit of white. Highlight along there. I can do a little swipe on his legs too. We do highlight with this mix along the top, outer edges of his little body there. Add a bit more highlight on his legs. Highlight out that lip a bit more too. And then we take the little tiny, take our liner and we'll come through and we'll pull these little flicks of hair, little pickies all throughout, off the edge, off the legs, give our legs a hairy spider look. So we'll do all those. And we're going to take some white as well with our green apple. And I'm going to add comma highlight along the bottom of this eye and the top of this eye. He's a little bit wacky. That's what we want. Want him to, this eyebrow is not showing. So we want, I think it'll show if I take some of my darker blue and kind of line along the top of the eye, or outer part of the eye. There. So I'll continue adding all these little flicks. Just come along and add these little hair. And then we've got little black fangs that come from our little spider's mouth. Put a little highlight on them. Add his pupil and a few more hair, and then it's done.